That's one of my favorite songs. It's an old hymn, and Matt Maher is the artist there. He redid it, but it's an anthem worth singing a lot these days, because we live in troubled times, friend. And expressing a need on the God who made us, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong at all. Kevin McCullough, glad you're with us. Welcome to New York. It's a pretty nice day here. We've got mid-70s, I think. I haven't spent that much time outside, so. But the sun's out, and we're grateful for that. I hope it's nice where you are as well. Two stories that we've been talking about so far. One, this education story out of Chicago. They are emphasizing that they will put in a curriculum this year that will have 5-year-olds in kindergarten taking sex education lessons. So parts, purpose, whatever. I guess they're going to discuss it, and there's a lot of people that are saying that doesn't seem that doesn't make any sense to be teaching 5-year-olds about that stuff. That just doesn't make any sense. We've also been talking about Syria and the new revelation today that Russia. Well, Putin went to the press. They are hosting the G20, and of course President Obama is going to be there, and they were on their way. But Mr. Putin said to the international press that John Kerry has been just flat out lying about the situation in Syria. And when he said that, he was just very plain spoken about it. Let me just read you the exact quote. This is according to today's USA Today for USA Today on AFA Today, because today's edition is where this was at. I like the word today. Speaking to people on Wednesday, Putin said, "This was very unpleasant and surprising for me. We talked to the Americans, and we assumed they are decent people. But he, John Kerry, is lying, and he knows that he is lying, and this is sad." The Associated Press reported a new flap over Kerry's testimony. And this is what the Associated Press said. It was unclear exactly what Putin was referencing, but Kerry was asked Tuesday while testifying before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee if the Syrian opposition had become more infiltrated by al-Qaeda. Kerry responded that that was basically incorrect and that the opposition has increasingly become more defined by its moderation. What does that even mean? We don't even know these guys. How's he able to make that assessment? In testimony Wednesday, Kerry said he didn't agree that a majority of the opposition are al-Qaeda and the bad guys. Extremists amount to 15 to 25% of the opposition, he said, including al-Nusra and many other groups that are fighting each other even now. Again, how does the Secretary of State know this? I think the Secretary of State makes this stuff up. It just whatever's in his head and out of his mouth, and that's it. I don't hear John McCain, who's actually gone over there and met with rebel groups. I don't hear him saying these kinds of percentages. 888-589-8840. Your thoughts, your comments, your reaction as Russia is now claiming a 100-page document that puts together all the evidence that says the chemical weapon attack came from al-Qaeda extremists amongst the rebels instead of the Assad regime, and saying that our leaders are lying to us. I don't particularly believe Putin, but if you're going to put evidence on the table and let us look at it, that's at least a starting place. Let's talk to Todd in Texas. Hi, Todd. You've been patient. Thanks for being so. You're on with Kevin McCullough on AFA Today.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, I have to tell you, before Obama was elected the first time, if you would have told me that the homosexual agenda would have reached this point and that we would be getting to kindergartners, I would have thought you were crazy. All these things that are happening, just, before he came, I don't believe anybody believed that any of this was possible. But now, as for Syria, we all know that Obama has, at the very least, sympathetic to the Muslim Brotherhood. He's always sided with them on every issue. And I believe back in March that they had a pretty strong foothold over there in Syria. And since that time, now they've been back and
we're losing you, Todd. Your phone's cracking up. I want to make one thing very clear. I don't know of Brotherhood involvement in the rebellion. I could be wrong, but the Brotherhood's efforts of recent days have been the turmoil in Egypt. But Al-Qaeda has certainly, which was a splinter group of Brotherhood, they have certainly been involved in Syria from the beginning. Let's go to George in Missouri. Hi, George. Welcome. You're on with Kevin McCullough on AFA Today.
Hey, Kevin, it's always great to hear from you, and thank you for doing what you're doing. I got 2 points. One's on the Syria, and the other one's on the kids. What I think is that maybe our friend Snowden is giving Putin some more information now that he knows he's safe, and all the information he's getting is good stuff. And the other thing is that, like that caller just before, he said that, maybe Al-Qaeda was losing. Why wouldn't Obama be over there helping him? And then the other thing about the kids, when I was a kid, 5 years old, I was playing in a cardboard box when I was a little kid. You don't need to teach these kids any more than what they already know on the Internet. They know too much. They need to be just let play like little kids.
Yeah.
And if these people can't, if the schools can't do anything, homeschool them, take them all out of the schools.
That's exactly what the McCullough family is going to do when the ankle biters get old enough. If we are unsatisfied with the amount of responsiveness that we sense the schools in our area are giving us, and we're going to be checking them out well before the first day, we will not put them in there. Parents, you need to remember, whether you send them to a public school, whether you send them to a Christian school, whether you send them to a private school that's not parochially associated, or whether you homeschool them, you're the most important agent of education in their life. They will learn more from you all the way around, but no matter what they're learning elsewhere, you need to be moderating that. You need to be monitoring it and moderating it. You need to be saying, what does that say? And why do you think it says that? And what does it mean? And asking them the questions to formulate their worldview so that they can articulate it, so that they can understand it, and have a system of thinking for themselves when they are no longer, your little rugrats. And that's what we're in the process of in the McCullough house. We're just on the front end of that. In fact, we have a little Christian preschool that the oldest boy, James, is going to starting this year. And so we're going to go over there this evening and check them out. We're going to be saying, what's your, and this is a church-based program. It's not even something, but we're just tough like that. We're just militant. You're not gonna get to mess with our kids' brains. They're not experimental creatures. There's no lab rat in them. We didn't sign them up to be mice for exploratory treatment. We are in the business of training them and grooming them. And if we don't, friend, if you don't take that lead, regardless of the school system, regardless of whether you put them in public school, private school, homeschool, whatever, if you don't take the lead in teaching them, the society is more than happy to do it by default. And you do not want that. You just don't want that. Bill in Texas, you're next on AFA Today. Kevin McCullough, glad you're here.
Yes, is this me, Bill?
Yep.
Well, thank you for your stance and your comments on the child down there in Shiner, Texas. We need to take a stance. Thank you. But clear up my fuzzy memory. Obama has been in hot water here the last couple of months. There's been a lot of charges made against him. Wasn't George Bush in the same boat just before the Gulf War? Am I right or wrong? But I'm saying by getting us into that war, his popularity will go way up, and he might get to end his presidency on something accomplished, which, to my opinion, everything he's tried has been a flop.
Well, George W. Bush was not associated with the Gulf War, just to be clear. That was his father. The issue with
the Iraq. I'm sorry.
Well, the war on terror, and it was in two theaters. It was in Afghanistan and in Iraq. And Actually, by the time they got to the Iraq portion of it, he was not exceedingly popular. But he did something that this current president hasn't done, and that several things. He built a coalition of other nations that came together. He went and got a UN resolution to support the action, and he had Congress's blessing on both actions. This president has none of those three things to date. So the parallels they're striking in how much contrast there is, because there's such a difference between the premise or the case that's being laid out there. Now, I want to slip in one more story today, because if you didn't think the other two were crazy enough, Putin is telling us that we haven't, we've been lying to the American people. Kerry and Obama have been lying to the American people. And then in Chicago, they want to put sex ed lessons into the kindergarten. If you think all of that is bad enough, or maybe you don't, Christianity Today and a writer by the name of Owen Strachan is actually saying that Christians should step away from a physically devastating, violent sport called football. He says there's nothing quite like a hit over the middle in a football game. A ballet-graceful wide receiver at full extension grabs a lightly thrown pass only to be smacked down like a rag doll in a heat-seeking safety. There is a problem that the gridiron lingo has become so familiar to coaches and commentators they cannot solve. You can be heroically tough for years, but you can't in the end shake off the hits. Blah, blah, blah. He says if the NFL is effectively admitting that the game of football causes physical harm to the tune of nearly $1 billion, which is based on all the lawsuits and other things that have been put together, does it behoove Christians to reconsider the game's violence? He says, I think it does. Let's briefly consider a few positive and negative aspects of football in order to try and get some moral clarity on a tough issue. And then he goes on for a few thousand more words to explain why he's moving away from football. That's just un-American. I'm sorry. Nobody ever played a game of football that didn't want to. Nobody was ever told you got to go put those pads on and go out and hit people or let them hit you that didn't have a desire to do so. Doesn't mean that you can't be safe. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have good equipment and so forth. But yeah, I'm not ready to turn football into the anti-Christian issue, although I'm sure hipsters from coast to coast singing their little songs in coffee shops with flannel shirts and long beards and glasses, I'm sure they're all going to be marching against the evil influence that football is very, very soon. Thing is, I've known too many football players. I've known in Christianity, it has a huge influence in the game. When every game is finished, there are Christians on all teams that come to the middle of the field and they have prayer meeting together. Every NFL game in every city this year will have dozens of Christian players that come together and pray following the game. I think there's more about football that we could probably get right in terms of safety, but I don't think it's time to step away. I think a lot of football players are having huge impact on the culture. Tim Tebow, David Tyree, who caught that pass for the Giants in the Super Bowl a few years ago. He's gone on to do some great work here in the New York area following his football career with young people that are on the tough side of life. I'm not ready to throw football under the bus. Like I said, that's just un-American. 888-589-8840. Let's take a couple more calls. Ann is in Texas. Welcome, Ann. You're on AFA Today with Kevin McCullough. Glad you're here. Hello, Ann. Ann, are you there? All right, maybe not. Derek in Texas. You're up next. Hi.
Hi, this is Derek. I live in Killeen, Texas.
Yeah.
As far as football goes, I know a young man, Tommy Harris. He plays for the Chicago Bears. It builds character, and it's a lot more than just, fighting and, knocking each other all around. But what I wanted to make a comment about is I have a 5-year-old grandson in Chicago that's in kindergarten. And that is no place for the kid to learn anything about sex. Sex is the last thing on their mind.
Derek, do you think the parents of that 5-year-old, be they your kids or nephews or whoever, do you think they're aware that the school system is starting this program?
No, they're not. They're not, because I spoke with my with a couple of them last night, and I don't think they know anything about it. This is the first that I've heard about it, and it's repulsing. I mean, to even think that a 5-year-old is interested in anything. 16 years old aren't ready for it.
You should have them contact the Chicago Public Schools main office and express their opinion. Obviously, they need to do it nicely, but they should speak out. These are schools that kids are going to be very vulnerable in, and they have a right to speak up. All right, Derek, thank you for the call. Appreciate it. Sorry that you have a grandson who's going to be impacted that way, but let's do what we can to help him. More information on that story over on onenewsnow.com, and it's just titled Sex Education for Kindergartners. You can read about the football story from Christianity Today. I'm actually going to link all these up to the AFA Today Facebook page and the Kevin McCullough Facebook page, so I hope you will follow us there. And, of course, keep praying for your leaders. We are in very, very tough times. We're in very, very sticky situation. And we want our leaders to be honest. We want them to have transparency. We want to be able to trust what they tell us. If what we are learning today from Russia turns out to be true, then there's no way we should be authorizing the use of force like this for the administration, if that is in fact the case. So I'm hoping we will have diligent senators and congressmen that follow up on that. I'm Kevin McCullough. Tonight, the Kevin McCullough Show on many of these same stations, and we're back for the Friday edition of AFA Today tomorrow at this same time. Now stay with us. The clear thinking continues with that silver fox, Brian Fisher, and Focal Point next on AFR Talk.